Hi, everyone. I want to take you through some things with evidence-based practice. And the first thing we're going to do is talk about what it is and why it's so important. So, what is evidence-based practice? That's when we use strategies, interventions, teaching activities, curriculums, programs, anything that we use with our students. We're basing those on things that have been shown through rigorous peer-reviewed research to be effective. So peer-reviewed research is the journal articles that you would use in your textbooks. And what that means is that someone has done a study on this particular intervention or scaffolding technique or whatever it may be. And I can tell you, as someone who has done this research, it's a difficult process for a reason, because we want to make sure that we're doing everything by the book and we're doing it correctly and we're following the correct steps and implementing the intervention with fidelity, to show whether or not it's actually effective with the students we want to use it with. So part of that process is going to your institutional review board and having subject matter experts look at your research and determine that it's a good solid study and that you've got good things that you're working with and you're using the right methods to test it. And then when you go to publish that, you've got a whole other set of subject matter experts who are reading your article and checking your methodology and your outcomes to make sure that everything is being represented correctly. So if we have something that's been peer reviewed, we can be certain that their outcomes are accurate, and if it's been found to be effective with the population of students they're working with, then we can feel confident using it if we have the same student population. So what's the big deal? Why do we care? When we don't use things that have been tested and vetted and shown in that super rigorous process to empirically be effective, at best it's ineffective, and we use a strategy and it's not going to work with our kids. It's not going to get us where we need to go, and we try something else. But the big danger here is that you can use some strategies or curriculums that haven't been shown to be effective, and that can actually teach kids the wrong approach. It can put kids well behind, and create significant skill gaps that are completely unnecessary. Also, a lot of things that we might do in terms of behavior or social emotional learning can actually make the behavior a whole lot worse and can really impact negatively the child's interactions with school and teachers and set up a long-term failure cycle. So we absolutely need to make sure that we're using peer-reviewed journal articles. Now, teachers pay teachers, and Pinterest have lots of good ideas. There are a lot of fun things, a lot of attractive, visually engaging, colorful ideas and fun things to do, especially with elementary kids that might fit a theme or a topic and they're just fun. And there is a time and place for that. But in the bulk of our teaching, initial teaching, and our intervention strategies, we really need to make sure that we are meeting those grade level content standards, that it was intended for the population of students you are working with. So you may be working with, third grade students, and you find something on Teachers Pay Teachers, and it's actually intended for fifth grade or first grade. Well, then, if it's fifth grade, it might be too hard and you can have a lot of frustration and not learning. And with first grade, it might be easy and fun, but we're not actually having any learning. We're not pushing the kids to something new. So sometimes you will find something on Teachers Pay Teachers or even Pinterest that has some research base. So if someone has linked the content standards that they've chosen, and check, states differ on this, so make sure it aligns with your content standards for your grade and your subject area. And occasionally something on Teachers Pay Teachers will provide research-based evidence. So this is where I see that this strategy works, and it's a peer-reviewed journal article, and you can tell that in the reference. But we really, really want to make sure, for the purposes of all of your graduate level coursework, you should absolutely be using peer-reviewed. Textbooks are peer-reviewed, so any of your textbooks that you have for the class you're in or another class that maybe is related to it, you can use. And then peer-reviewed journal articles should be your next evidence of effectiveness. And there are a few ways you can approach this. In one aspect, you can go to the What Works Clearinghouse to get some ideas. They do a super intensive process of going through those studies that have been published and then looking at effectiveness of different programs, different specific curriculums and programs. And I will tell you, just as a bit of a side note, that I started to go through that process to become a reviewer for What Works Clearinghouse, and it was just so incredibly intense that I did not have the time or headspace to get through that. So trust me when I say that they have gone to extreme lengths to check out these studies, check out the rigor of the studies, and make sure that they actually have reported things correctly. So if you need to, if you don't have any ideas, what do I do with this? How do I approach this? You can start with the What Works Clearinghouse to find a program that has a high evidence base from it. And then you can find some articles about that program. So the IRIS Center also has some evidence-based practice modules that you can check out. So once you know, okay, I don't have a textbook, maybe I need to go find something. I am going to go through the campus library because you do have access to that off campus, and Google Scholar. I think most of us probably go with Google Scholar because it's quickest and easiest. And, sometimes I find more on Google Scholar. Sometimes there's something on Google Scholar that I can't get access to, but I copy and paste the title into the Mount Vernon library system and it pops up there because they've paid for us to have access to these things. What I want to really cue you into here is that when you're using Google Scholar, there's not really an advanced setting for breaking things down. So we're going to do this through what we call a Boolean search. So a Boolean search picks up on phrases. So it's not looking for a specific title with all of the words in it that you put. It's taking pieces of what you put and putting them together. So if I need some scaffolding strategies to teach math to elementary students with learning disabilities, I'm going to start with scaffolding math or scaffolding and math. If you put the and in all caps, it'll register the next thing as a separate search term. So and in all caps, elementary, you want your grade level or your population. So that's why I have and learning disabilities. And we want all of our peer-reviewed research to be recent. We typically say within the last 10 years. So I think when you're looking for interventions, probably 5 to 7 years is your best bet. What happens sometimes if you don't put that in there is that it'll pull up some strategies from the 80s. And we know that some of those things have been proven to be ineffective later, or it's got some research on a program that is no longer published and no longer available, and then you can't use that anyway. So I have put in and since 2017 to keep it recent. So then when I click search, this brings up lots of articles. One thing to be aware of, if you look over on the right, if it either says PDF or HTML, that means the full text of the article is available. So you will be able to read the actual entire article. If there's nothing over to the right, all you're going to have access to on Google Scholar is the abstract. The other thing that's nice about Google Scholar is that it helps us with our citations. So if we go up to this little quotation mark and cite and click on that, it brings it up in different formats. What I want you to be cautious of is that you have to double check these. Occasionally, an international journal will put it in with some all caps. Some of them are not up to date with APA 7. There is no retrieved from or DOI in this, and that is necessary in 7th edition. So you just have to go into the article itself and pull the DOI from that. So this is a great starting point. You can copy and paste, check your formatting, check to make sure everything is right, and then you're good to go there. So when we read one of these articles, again, up at the top right here where it says DOI is where you get that digital object identifier, which is the permanent placement for where to find that article so someone else can go and find it. When you go through these articles, there's a lot of stuff in the methodology that you don't really need to look at. That's something that unless you're working on a doctorate and a dissertation, you're not really looking necessarily at all of the methodology. So the best approach to do this with peer-reviewed journal articles, because they can be, a little dense, a little tough to read. So you start by reading your abstract, okay? And this will tell you the summary of the article overall. So students with learning disabilities, it's mathematical topics. They're using visual models to support student learning. for abstract and symbolic problems. And I go, okay, fantastic. I'm working with elementary students with learning disabilities and I need to scaffold math. So this looks perfect. This is definitely the population I want. So it talks about different challenges, different things. Generally, the abstract will have the results, if you will, of the study. So it'll show if it was effective or ineffective. So if it says here that, this approach was completely ineffective and students made no growth, I exit out of it and go to something else. This does not work. We don't want to use this. In this case, it doesn't specifically say, so I'm going to read on to find out. So you're going to read this. The introduction is going to be the background. It's going to give you some context. There are usually things in there you can cite, some descriptions of other programs that have been shown to be effective. And then if you come to a methodology section, then you wouldn't need to. So this is more of a conceptual article. So everything in here you would read. It's only 6 pages. You would read all of that. You're going to go through there and you're going to determine, what strategies can I pull from this? What can I use? Let's look at this one. So we're going to look at computer-based scaffolding. So if I'm not looking at technology, if that's not something available and I don't want to use it, again, get out of it, find something that does work. If I can use that, I may say, okay, let's check it out. So I'm going to read the intro, and then we've got the literature review, which is the background. So this tells us more about scaffolding and what it is. Here are some things that we have been shown research-wise to use. And then if you see one of these in the literature review and you go, wait, this one looks really good, you can find this in the reference list, find the title of the article and where it came from, and find that exact article to go back and see what they said and get some more ideas that way. Okay, we've got research questions. And again, here we've got a method. Okay, you can skip all of this. If you want to read it, you're more than welcome to. This is the methods of specifically how they did their study. All of these things we can skip through. You don't need to worry about all of those things. We're just going to go down to the end. And this was a qualitative study, so the coding and results are a lot longer. The results in a qualitative study, which means we use language versus numbers. So we've asked people maybe what they think. This can give you some information. Generally, if you look at all of these mathematical terms and concepts, that's not going to make sense for what we need to do. So we can continue to skip these things. And then go clear down till we get to the discussion. So implications for instruction. This is the really big meat of what you're going to use to find evidence-based practice. So here's where they're going to discuss what were the outcomes of our study. Did it work? Was it effective? Was this something that you should use with your students as well? So a lot of what you're going to cite for a specific intervention is going to come from the discussion part. And then usually there are some implications for further research or further practice. You can read through some of those things. Some of the limitations sometimes talk about different populations of students. And this is where it may say we conducted this study only with students who have specific learning disabilities. So it may not be as effective with students with more significant disabilities. And then you take that into consideration with your student population. Okay, the other thing I'm going to show you is the MVNU library, the Thorne Library. So if you go to the library page, as graduate students and undergraduate students, you all have access to this off campus. And the first thing I'm going to do is go straight to advanced search. This saves you a lot of time in going through things that aren't relevant at all. So I am actually off campus today, so it's logging me in as a guest. So I just have to click this and then sign in with my MVNU credentials. So you're just going to use your username and password that you would use for Moodle. And you're going to come in here and we're going to see, this looks a little bit different, but I'm going to say scaffolding, math, elementary. If I can spell, and then you can come over here and add. So I want to say learning disabilities. So each phrase goes in a separate box. And then I'm going to come down here and go to Boolean phrase. If you keep it on find all my search teams, it's going to search terms. It's going to try to find all of those words together in one title, and it's going to come up with nothing. And then you're going to say nothing exists. This is crazy. I'm going back to Pinterest. Don't do that. Switch to Boolean phrase or go to Google Scholar. Okay. Then I'm going to come down here and go full text. I don't want to waste time with something that I can't actually read. Scholarly peer-reviewed journal articles, that's absolutely what we want, so we must pick that one. The language, I'm going to pick English. It's really kind of disheartening to find an article that based on the title and abstract looks really good, and then you click it and it's in like Swedish and you can't read it. Published date, I don't care necessarily usually about the month, but I'm going to say no earlier than 2017 and end year 2023. And then click search. And this is going to bring up my articles here. So you can go through, it'll tell you a little bit about the subjects and what you're doing. And then if this is here, that means they have it available. I have not found a citation support with this one, so you would need to use your APA manual and figure out what your citation would be on that one yourself. But you can come in and see, and then here we've got down, it checks, it's peer reviewed, absolutely, we've got a direct link, and then you download the full text. And again, you can go through your article this way. So that's how to find your article, how to break it down and read it. Tips for Google Scholar and the school library. So happy researching.